In Pompeii's final hours, the sky darkened until daylight felt like a fading memory, and the first drifting ash settled like an omen no one could decipher. Witnesses later spoke of a silence that came before the collapse, a moment when time itself seemed to hesitate. As roofs buckled and streets vanished beneath falling cinders, the city froze in a single, eerie tableau. Yet beneath that stillness, something else was captured. Rooms sealed, murals untouched, stories never meant to resurface. What if the eruption preserved not just lives interrupted, but secrets the ancient world tried desperately to bury forever beyond recovery? Early archaeologists approached Pompeii expecting an ordinary Roman town, a predictable grid of villas and workshops waiting to be catalogued. Instead, as they brushed aside the compacted ash, they stumbled on anomalies that defied every expectation. Corridors bricked shut from the inside, chambers sealed with no signs of damage, doorways blocked long before the eruption. These discoveries suggested deliberate concealment rather than disaster. Even today, historians struggle to explain why certain rooms were hidden away, preserved with unsettling perfection, as if someone anticipated Vesuvius's fury and chose to protect secrets that were never meant to face the light again at all. When word spread among early excavators, it was said in hushed tones that certain frescoes were too unsettling to display, their imagery far beyond what 18th century eyes could tolerate. Sketches were quietly escorted into private royal cabinets, locked behind velvet curtains and guarded with unusual discretion. Scholars invited to view them emerged pale, offering only evasive descriptions, as though language itself refused to cooperate. Why did powerful institutions rush to suppress entire sections of Pompeian art? What scenes lay on those walls that threatened the moral order so deeply that secrecy felt safer than truth? In the world today still, in several Pompeian homes, excavators found chambers bolted shut from the outside, their entrances reinforced as if someone had urgently tried to contain whatever lay within. When the doors finally gave way after nearly 2 millennia, the rooms revealed murals preserved with unnerving clarity, images untouched by time, yet strangely isolated from the rest of the house. It was as though these spaces were never meant to be entered again, sealed not by catastrophe, but by intention. What were the Romans trying to hide or protect from curious eyes? And why were these rooms treated with such deliberate, almost ritual-like caution? Pompeii is usually remembered for the way its people lived, the markets, the villas, the ordinary rhythms frozen by disaster. But as excavators dug deeper, it became clear that the city's greatest mystery was not its daily life at all, but what its artists chose to place on their walls. Beneath layers of ash and centuries of silence, frescoes emerged that defied interpretation, scenes that refused to fit neatly into Roman myth or custom. It was as if an entirely different narrative had been painted beneath the surface of this familiar city. And the strangest part, some frescoes still have no official explanation. When early excavators reported their findings to the Bourbon king, the most unsettling pieces were quietly removed from public view and placed inside a private secret cabinet that only a handful of eyes would ever see. Officials insisted the material was indecent, yet their urgency suggested something far stranger. Scholars requesting access were vetted like potential threats, and many were refused without explanation. What had they uncovered that required royal protection? Some whispered that the frescoes depicted forbidden rites or unknown deities, scenes that challenged accepted history, and the king feared the disruption they might unleash in those hidden vaults. Among the earliest discoveries was a fresco that caused immediate uproar among the excavators, a scene so unclassifiable that seasoned scholars argued over whether it depicted myth, ritual, or something entirely unprecedented. The painting showed masked figures arranged around a central symbol, their gestures intricate and deliberate, yet unlike any documented Roman practice. Reports claim the air in the chamber felt strange, as if the space had preserved not only imagery, but atmosphere. Researchers struggled to categorize what they saw, and the inability to link it to known traditions created an anxiety that spread quickly through the excavation team today. As rumors about the bizarre frescoes circulated, local officials tightened their grip on the excavation, issuing stern warnings to scholars not to publish sketches or descriptions without explicit approval. Several researchers later admitted in private letters that they had been threatened with dismissal or worse if they revealed what they had witnessed. The secrecy surrounding these murals grew into an unspoken rule, creating an atmosphere of quiet intimidation. Why did authorities feel such urgency to control the narrative? The pressure suggested that the images challenged conventional history in ways that powerful individuals found deeply unsettling and potentially destabilizing for generations. Witnesses to the early excavations often spoke of the extraordinary brilliance of certain pigments uncovered in the forbidden rooms, colors so vivid they seemed freshly painted despite 2 millennia underground. Some hues shimmered with an almost metallic quality, defying known Roman recipes and baffling modern chemists. Theories emerged about lost techniques, esoteric formulas, or foreign influences long erased from historical records. These peculiar pigments fed speculation that the frescoes were never meant for ordinary audiences, but served a purpose now forgotten. Even today, scientists admit they cannot fully reproduce the effect, leaving the question of their origin unresolved. To many, despite growing curiosity, officials chose to reseal the secret cabinet, closing its doors for decades and allowing only select visitors to view its contents under strict supervision. The more restricted the access became, the more speculation thrived, fostering whispers of censored rituals, hidden histories, and imagery too disruptive for public knowledge. Some argued that the state wished to protect morality. Others believed the motive ran deeper, rooted in fear of what the frescoes implied about Rome's forgotten undercurrents. Even now, portions of the collection remain inaccessible, prompting a lingering question. Why does secrecy persist after so many centuries of silence? On the outskirts of Pompeii, excavators uncovered an estate that immediately stood out because it bore no inscription identifying its owner, a stark contrast to the proudly labeled houses elsewhere in the city. Its anonymity raised suspicions, suggesting intentional concealment rather than simple omission. The architecture felt strangely inconsistent, as if modified over time to obscure its purpose. Rooms seemed arranged to confuse rather than welcome visitors, and the very silence of the house felt curated. Why would a wealthy inhabitant erase their own identity? The lack of answers fueled theories of secret gatherings or individuals wishing to remain unseen. Inside the entrance hall, archaeologists found a puzzling array of symbols that blended artistic traditions rarely seen together. Some resembled Etruscan markings, others hinted at Eastern iconography, yet none aligned with the familiar motifs of Roman domestic art. The resulting collage felt purposeful, almost coded, as though the painter intended a message recognizable only to a select group. Scholars debated whether the symbols were decorative experiments or indicators of a hidden belief system operating beneath the surface of everyday Pompeian life. Their ambiguity complicated any attempt at interpretation, leaving the hall shrouded in uncertainty that still troubles experts even now. In one of the villa's inner rooms, a striking fresco portrayed a woman whose eyes seemed to follow observers with uncanny precision, a disquieting effect noted even by hardened researchers. Her expression hovered between warning and invitation, rendered with a realism uncommon in typical Pompeian art. What made her presence more mysterious was the absence of any accompanying mythological context. She appeared as an isolated figure, important yet unexplained. Some speculated she represented a guardian spirit or a forgotten deity, while others believed she was modeled after a real individual the household sought to immortalize in secrecy for all time. Elsewhere in the villa, sections of frescoes displayed unsettling signs of deliberate erasure. Figures had been scraped away with careful strokes, leaving faint silhouettes that hinted at what once occupied the space. The precision suggested intention rather than vandalism, as though someone had hoped to obscure identities or rituals without destroying the overall composition. Scholars debated whether these removals represented attempts to rewrite family history, conceal forbidden imagery, or distance the house from a disapproved cult. Whatever the motive, the absence became as revealing as the presence, transforming the damaged frescoes into enigmatic testimonies of choices lost to time forever. Behind one of the frescoed walls, excavators uncovered a narrow passage that did not appear on early maps of the property, a space so expertly concealed that it seemed designed to escape detection. The room at its end contained no furniture, only smooth walls that bore subtle traces of pigment, as if a mural had once existed and been purposefully removed. Its emptiness felt intentional, provoking speculation that the chamber served a confidential function, perhaps for meetings, rituals, or storage of sensitive items. The discovery complicated the villa's narrative, suggesting layers of activity obscured from ordinary view for centuries unseen. Excavators uncovered a chamber whose frescoes depicted a ritual unlike anything found in Roman literature. A gathering of figures seated around a long table draped in dark cloth, their hands lifted in synchronized gestures that resembled neither worship nor celebration, but something in between, something far more secretive. No myths, no surviving cult practices, no scattered references in classical texts pointed to such a ceremony. The silence in historical records only deepened the unease these images provoked. It was as if the participants belonged to a group that operated outside accepted religion, a hidden fellowship whose customs were never meant to survive. Among the painted figures, one stood out immediately. A tall presence, cloaked in deep shadow, its face left blank, as if erased or never intended to exist. The featureless head created a chilling focal point, drawing attention away from the other participants. Why would an artist portray a human form, yet deny it identity? Some suggested the blankness symbolized a deity beyond representation, while others argued it marked a forbidden entity whose presence could not be directly acknowledged. The ambiguity only intensified the mural's effect, leaving viewers unsettled by a being that seemed to exist outside ordinary boundaries of depiction. At the center of the painted table rested a small, unmistakable sigil, one that has baffled scholars since its discovery. It bore no resemblance to symbols associated with Jupiter, Bacchus, or any known Roman deity. Instead, it resembled an angular design with loops and broken lines, a pattern foreign to local tradition. The symbol's placement implied importance, perhaps denoting the purpose of the gathering or the name of the unseen figure presiding over it. Yet classical historians cannot trace its origin, prompting speculation about fringe cults or imported beliefs. The sigil's very existence hints at a parallel spiritual world. Another fresco depicted musicians positioned beside the ritual table, playing instruments unfamiliar to archaeologists with shapes and structures not preserved elsewhere in Roman material culture. The strings curved at impossible angles, and one horn-like device extended far longer than practical use would allow. The figure's postures suggested a measured, hypnotic rhythm, perhaps intended to induce a trance-like state in participants. What kind of music accompanied these gatherings? And why would the artist portray instruments without real-world counterparts? The absence of any textual reference suggests this scene might capture a tradition intentionally kept secret, preserved only in this secluded space. When restorers first documented the Shadow Feast chamber, they quickly realized its imagery would provoke intense public fascination and potentially destabilizing interpretations. Officials intervened, restricting access and requiring special permission for further study. Some photographs were withheld entirely, and early sketches disappeared into private archives. Why would authorities fear public reaction to ancient frescoes? Perhaps the scene suggested a side of Rome that contradicted established narratives, one of hidden sects and unauthorized belief systems. The unexplained censorship only deepened the mural's mystery, ensuring that most of what was discovered remains known only to a select circle of experts today. One of the most astonishing discoveries in Pompeii is a mural that appears to depict Mount Vesuvius erupting, painted years before the catastrophe ever occurred. The scene shows the volcano crowned with a plume of ash and fire, its slopes glowing with streams that resemble magma. Yet no Roman writer records any eruption in the decades leading up to 79 CE. How could an artist anticipate a disaster with such precision? Some argue it symbolizes chaos or divine wrath, but the accuracy challenges symbolic interpretation. It feels less like myth and more like a warning encoded in pigment long before tragedy struck. At the center of the mural stands a lone figure, calmly watching the erupting mountain as ash swirls around him. He seems unaffected, almost serene, as if he already knew what would follow. His posture does not signal fear or flight, but observation, as though he possessed knowledge others lacked. Was he meant to represent a prophet, or perhaps an individual who had witnessed an earlier, unrecorded eruption? The mural offers no answers, only the unsettling implication that someone foresaw the destruction. His quiet presence beneath the falling ash casts an eerie shadow over the otherwise chaotic scene, frozen in time. Modern volcanologists who examined the mural noted details surprisingly consistent with scientific knowledge unavailable in ancient times. The artist depicted stratified ash clouds, pyroclastic flows, and shockwave patterns according to models developed only in the 20th century. How could a Roman painter portray phenomena not yet understood by scholars of their era? Skeptics argue coincidence, yet the specificity seems too exact. The mural mirrors geological reconstructions made centuries later, challenging assumptions about the artist's intentions. Was this a merely artistic imagination or evidence of a lost tradition of empirical observation? The discrepancies deepen the mural's uncanny and perplexing nature further. Chemical analysis of the mural revealed pigments that do not match typical Roman formulations. One particular red displayed a metallic shimmer, unlike cinnabar or ochre, while a deep blue resisted classification entirely, reflecting light as though infused with microscopic crystals. Scientists ran tests only to find mixtures that should not exist in known Roman palettes. Did the artist possess a forgotten recipe, Or were these materials imported through unknown channels? The unusual pigments heightened the mystery, suggesting the mural's creation involved techniques now lost. The more researchers learned, the more they realized how little they understood about this enigmatic artifact. When researchers presented their findings, prophetic imagery, advanced geological accuracy, and unknown pigments, authorities responded with cautious dismissal, labeling the similarities as coincidence. Official publications minimized the anomalies, framing them as artistic exaggerations or misunderstood symbolism. Yet the reluctance to engage seriously with the evidence raised more questions than answers. Why refuse to explore possibilities that could reshape our understanding of Roman knowledge? Perhaps acknowledging the mural's implications would unravel comfortable historical narratives. Whatever the reason, the official stance remains unchanged. Coincidence. But those who have studied the fresco closely insist the truth is far stranger than the explanation suggests. For centuries, the erotic frescoes of Pompeii were dismissed as proof of Roman excess, little more than tavern decorations or playful amusements. But when researchers examined them closely, patterns emerged that suggested a deeper purpose. Certain poses repeated across distant locations, their arrangement resembling coded sequences rather than spontaneous scenes. Subtle gestures aligned with political symbols, while background details referenced rituals rarely mentioned in surviving texts. What looked like simple hedonism may have been a clever disguise concealing messages intended for a select audience. These murals might not celebrate indulgence at all, but guard esoteric knowledge hidden beneath familiar forms. In one fresco, two figures embrace under a warm glow, yet the shadows cast behind them stretch in directions inconsistent with the depicted light source. This anomaly puzzled researchers, for Roman artists were skilled observers and rarely made such errors. The mismatched shadows suggest the scene symbolizes an event not meant to be literal, or perhaps incorporates elements from separate moments in time. Some believe the opposing shadows reflect dualities, life and death, desire and fear, encoded through subtle artistic choices. Whatever the intention, the inconsistency disrupts the viewer's expectations, hinting that the mural's true meaning lies far beyond erotic interpretation. More unsettling than the lovers is the small child rendered in the corner, barely noticeable at first glance. He stands apart from the scene, observing with an expression too mature for his apparent age. His presence appears in multiple erotic murals across Pompeii, always in shadow, always watching. Some scholars speculate he represents a witness, a guide, or perhaps a symbolic reminder of innocence corrupted. Others argue he embodies a spirit or guardian tied to household rituals. The repetition raises questions. Why include a silent child in scenes intended for pleasure? His quiet gaze lingers, haunting every interpretation offered. Across several frescoes, slender red strokes appear along door frames or thresholds, sometimes barely visible beneath layers of pigment. Initially dismissed as decorative accents, they later proved to follow a repeating pattern, the same arrangement appearing in different homes. When mapped onto Pompeii itself, the markings corresponded to specific streets and intersections, as though forming a coded diagram of movement or access. Were these red symbols navigational aids for an underground network, or markers of allegiance to a hidden group? Their placement suggests intention rather than coincidence, inviting speculation about a clandestine communication system disguised within erotic iconography, perfectly hidden. Modern imaging techniques revealed that many erotic frescoes sit atop older paintings, their underlying layers containing faint outlines of symbols and figures unrelated to the surface scenes. It appears that original murals were deliberately overwritten, replaced not to erase, but to conceal. The erotic imagery may have served as camouflage, diverting attention from messages intended only for those who knew how to interpret the faded forms beneath. Why were these earlier images hidden? And who decided that secrecy required such elaborate coverings? The discovery transforms these murals into palimpsests, silent witnesses to a forgotten narrative still struggling to be seen today. In one secluded hall, excavators discovered frescoes portraying deities with unfamiliar attributes, hybrid forms combining Roman, Greek, and entirely unknown elements. These figures held objects that defied interpretation, neither mythological symbols nor common ritual items. Scholars attempted to match them with local cults, imported traditions, and obscure myths, yet no direct parallels emerged. The anonymity of these gods created an eerie vacuum, suggesting the existence of belief systems absent from the written record. If these deities were worshipped in Pompeii, why did no contemporary writer mention them? Their presence hints at a spiritual world carefully hidden from official Roman culture. One fresco depicted a shadowy figure consuming offerings laid before it, the painted food dissolving into swirling darkness rather than entering a defined mouth. The lack of clear anatomy unsettled archaeologists who struggled to classify the being as divine, monstrous, or symbolic. Some argued it represented a ritual transformation, others a guardian spirit protecting the household. Yet its ravenous posture and enveloping aura suggested something more ominous, a force revered not out of devotion but fear. That such an entity appeared within a domestic setting raises questions about the beliefs held by Pompeians behind closed doors, hidden from prying Roman authorities. A recurring motif throughout the hall was a golden serpent coiled around a staff, its eyes rendered with an unnerving brightness. While serpents appear in Roman symbolism, the specific posture and crown atop its head did not match any known cult representation. Some believed it symbolized renewal or protection, while others thought it warned of danger. Its repetition across separate rooms suggested it served as a unifying emblem for whatever group used the hall. The serpent's shimmering presence captivated researchers, leaving them to wonder whether it represented a deity, a guardian, or an esoteric concept lost to modern understanding. On one wall, artists painted a door with such meticulous realism that early excavators attempted to open it, only to realize it was part of the mural. Yet, when they stood before it, the acoustics of the room changed subtly, as though the painted threshold marked a shift in space. Some recorded echoes that seemed disproportionate to the chamber's size, prompting speculation that the location once held ceremonial functions. Why would an artist paint a door so convincingly without including a mythological scene? Its realism felt intentional, inviting entry into a realm that perhaps once existed symbolically behind the image. Perhaps most disturbing were the deliberate scratches marring several divine faces, the marks carefully targeted yet not destructive enough to damage the entire fresco. It appeared someone had attempted to erase these gods from memory without eradicating the surrounding art. Were these defacements acts of rebellion, punishment, or fear? The selective nature of the damage suggests a crisis of faith or an official purge targeting forbidden worship. The scratched faces hover between presence and absence, silent testimonies of beliefs forcibly removed from Pompeii's spiritual landscape. Their mutilation only deepens the mystery of who once revered these vanished gods. Beneath Pompeii's infamous brothel, archaeologists uncovered a chamber absent from any ancient blueprint, a space so carefully hidden it seemed designed to escape all detection. The rough steps leading down were carved with deliberate precision, their edges worn by use yet unknown to history. No ventilation, no formal entrance, no clear purpose, only a suffocating darkness revealing that someone wanted this room concealed. Its isolation suggested activities meant to remain unspoken, rituals or meetings far removed from the brothel's everyday noise. Why hide access beneath such a public place? The contradiction itself deepened the room's mystery until explanations dissolved completely. Inside the vault, frescoes portrayed figures unlike the typical Roman inhabitants above. Their clothing bore intricate patterns resembling Near Eastern textiles, and their faces carried features more common to distant provinces. Some held objects unfamiliar to Roman culture, curved tools, ornate vessels, and scrolls unlike any recovered in Pompeii. Were these images decorative fantasies or documentation of real visitors whose presence was intentionally concealed? The diversity depicted in the vault contradicted the expected clientele of a local brothel, prompting speculation that this hidden room served a network of travelers who moved in secrecy. Their story, however, remains as buried as the chamber itself. A fresco on the chamber's northern wall displayed a table lined with 7 strange tools, each rendered with meticulous detail. They resembled surgical instruments, yet no medical supplies or evidence of treatment rooms existed above. The tools' arrangement suggested ritual significance rather than practical use. Scholars debated whether they belonged to healers, craftsmen, or an unknown ceremonial group operating discreetly beneath the city. The absence of any physical tools in the vault only heightened the puzzle, implying the objects might have held symbolic value. Why paint tools never found in reality? What purpose did they serve in this subterranean world unseen? Above the frescoes, the ceiling bore a detailed star map displaying constellations with surprising accuracy for 79 CE. Unlike standard Roman astronomical art, this map included faint lines indicating trajectories, conjunctions, or perhaps predictions. Some stars were positioned slightly off their known ancient placements, suggesting either earlier observations or hidden knowledge of celestial drift. Why would a brothel conceal astronomical information reserved for scholars and navigators? The juxtaposition of earthly desire above and cosmic calculation below hinted at an organization operating behind social facades. Whether the map served practical or mystical purposes remains one of Pompeii's most haunting uncertainties. Despite its elaborate frescoes and apparent importance, the vault showed signs of sudden desertion. Tools were left mid-use, a stool overturned, and fragments of pottery scattered as if dropped in haste. The unfinished mural on the western wall suggested work interrupted by an unexpected alarm. Unlike the orderly evacuations found elsewhere, the chamber froze an atmosphere of fear. Why did its occupants flee so abruptly? And what were they preparing or hiding in those final moments? The unanswered questions transformed the vault into a chilling time capsule, capturing a panic lost to history, sealed beneath ash and forgotten secrets. In a modest Pompeian home, researchers uncovered a mural identical to one in Herculaneum, down to the smallest brushstroke. Such precision suggested the two were created not in imitation, but by the same artist or the same organization, operating across both cities. The duplication implied coordinated rituals or beliefs shared through a hidden network spanning the Bay of Naples. Why would secret iconography appear in multiple cities, identical yet unmentioned in surviving texts? The fresco's twin existence challenges the assumption that Pompeii's mysteries were isolated. Instead, they hint at a broader cultural undercurrent deliberately disguised beneath the surface of daily life. Another room contained a fresco that ended abruptly in mid stroke, as if the painter had vanished before completing the scene. The half formed image depicts figures moving toward a central object, now lost to unfinished outlines. Brushes lay on the floor nearby, bristles hardened by time, but positioned as though dropped in sudden alarm. What compelled the artist to abandon the work? Was it the eruption or something preceding it? The incomplete scene feels like a story interrupted, a final message that never reached its viewers. Its silence pulls viewers closer, inviting interpretations that only multiply as certainty slips further away. Scattered throughout the room were small tools, pigment bowls, chalk lines, sharpening stones, arranged in ways inconsistent with everyday artistic practice. They formed a loose circle around the mural, almost ritualistic in placement, as though the process of painting carried ceremonial significance. Archaeologists noted the absence of casual clutter, typical of workshops, suggesting the space served a specific and perhaps sacred function. If the artist followed a pattern unknown to modern scholars, what rules guided their movements? The tool's arrangement raises the possibility that the act of painting was itself an invocation, an attempt to preserve something greater than mere decoration. Near the lower corner of the wall, faint markings revealed what appeared to be a signature, yet written in an alphabet unfamiliar to Roman Italy. The characters curved elegantly, their shapes more akin to Eastern scripts than Latin. No known Pompeian inscription shares these traits. Was the artist an outsider, or did they belong to a group employing a private written language? The signature's presence suggests authorship that deliberately resists identification, as though the painter expected future viewers to question their origins. Its cryptic form transforms the mural into a message delivered by hands that remain stubbornly anonymous. At the mural's center, faint abrasions indicate a figure once painted there, later scraped away with deliberate care. The surrounding details remain untouched, highlighting the intentional removal of this single character. Why was this particular figure erased? Was the person depicted dangerous, scandalous, or linked to a forbidden narrative? The careful extraction leaves behind a ghostly outline, a presence defined by absence. Its removal suggests conflict, someone wanting to preserve the mural while erasing its heart. The unanswered motive invites speculation that the figure's identity threatened either the artist, the household, or an entire belief system now buried with the city. As archaeologists piece together the fragments of Pompeii's hidden imagery, one truth grew unavoidable. The Roman world was far stranger and more intricate than schoolbook narratives suggest. Behind the familiar architecture and bustling streets lay layers of private belief, secret gatherings, and artistic expressions that defied the empire's polished public image. The frescoes revealed a society comfortable with paradox, where official religion existed beside quiet deviations and underground traditions. These discoveries force us to reconsider Rome not as a monolithic culture, but as a tapestry woven with threads of mystery, some glowing clearly, others fading, and many never meant for daylight. The symbols, erased figures, and concealed rooms pointed toward belief systems operating parallel to state-approved worship, traditions practiced discreetly by individuals who feared scrutiny. These were not simple variations of Roman religion, but entirely distinct frameworks, complete with unknown deities, coded rituals, and hidden initiates. Their secrecy may explain the absence of written references. Oral and symbolic transmissions were safer than scrolls liable to confiscation. Pompeii's frescoes reveal a quiet defiance within the empire, communities that safeguarded their spiritual identities behind layers of pigment. Whether these groups were fringe cults or remnants of older traditions remains one of history's most elusive questions. Despite the devastation, the eruption preserved more than bodies and buildings. It captured knowledge that otherwise would have vanished. Techniques for creating pigments that defy modern chemistry, star maps showing advanced sky watching, and encoded frescoes hint at a level of intellectual curiosity rarely attributed to common Romans. These fragments suggest that some inhabitants possessed scientific or mystical insights, passed through closed circles rather than public institutions. The ash sealed their achievements, offering us a rare glimpse into hidden learning that might have disappeared entirely. Yet these glimpses are scattered, incomplete, and tantalizing, as though Pompeii preserved only the edges of vast, forgotten traditions. Even with modern technology and generations of research, many frescoes remain stubbornly enigmatic. Some depict instruments unknown to archaeology. Others portray scenes that defy established mythology. The pigments, symbols, and concealed chambers only multiply the mysteries instead of resolving them. Institutions often downplay the inexplicable elements, preferring interpretations that fit conventional narratives. Yet every unanswered question lingers like a whisper beneath the ash, urging us to look again. What if the strangest frescoes have never been shown to the public? And what if the most revealing ones still lie buried, untouched, waiting for someone brave enough to confront their implications? Pompeii speaks not only through its tragedy, but through its silence, the secrets it held, the stories it protected, and the images it buried twice, once by intention and once by disaster. The forbidden frescoes serve as a reminder that history is far more complex than the fragments we inherit. They challenge us to question what knowledge societies choose to hide and why. Beneath the ash lies a lesson about truth and suppression, about human fascination with the mysterious. And perhaps Pompeii's final warning is this: what we bury does not disappear. It waits patiently for the moment it is uncovered again,